Okay, hi there. Welcome back. So this is a part two of the last series. So that's why we have same look and everything. So last time we kind of broke down what boundaries was all about and really exemplified really bad boundaries and then good boundaries and all of that and typified why do I need to set boundaries. But today I want to talk to you about some ways to set and maintain good boundaries, and we're going to go through it one after the other. Number one, self reflect. One of the ways to successfully introduce and set boundaries is to understand why each boundary is important to you and how they will benefit your emotional well being. So, it's very important that you take out some time to be a detective of your own psychology. So, what happens to you and makes you feel uncomfortable, because there are certain things that happen to people and they don't know why they feel uncomfortable. So, one of the first ways to have healthy boundaries is to spend time to understand what's happening in my life, what's going on with me, because boundaries begin with me first before imposing it on others. Number two, start small. If you don't have many boundaries in place already, the idea of introducing more might be overwhelming. So you can start small by building it up slowly. For example, you can set a boundary that after 10 p.m., you will not answer phone calls anymore, but rather you would not reply chats anymore until the next morning. You see, when you do things at your own pace or at a comfortable pace, it gives you that time to reflect on whether what you're doing is taking you in the right direction or if adjustments need to be made. And if adjustments needs to be made, then you make them. Then if there are no need for adjustments, then you proceed as planned. But it's very, very important that you start small. Number three, set them early. You see, sometimes it can be really hard to put boundaries when relationships have already started. But when you put boundaries right away, it's a lot easier to work with. So, for example, in your workplace, you can decide, I'm going to only work during the work hours, I will not take work home. Now, if you wake up one morning and decide to do that, you may have issues with your boss, especially in the African system, because if you've been doing it, why wake up all of a sudden and change it? You can change it, but it would be a lot more difficult, except it would be easier starting from the beginning to say, listen, I refuse to take work home. So work time is work time. Anything that will come home with me is absolutely unacceptable. So by setting boundaries and expectations from the very beginning, everyone knows where they stand and nobody is going to claim that they are hurt. Nobody's going to claim that they are misunderstood. Nobody's going to claim that they are offended. And nobody is going to claim that you're frustrating them by all of a sudden creating a boundary that they're not familiar with. Number four, be consistent. You see, letting boundaries slide can lead to confusion and encourage new expectations and demands for those amongst you. If you start something, start it. It doesn't matter who is involved as long as you sustain your boundaries, because when you keep changing the rules for people, people will all of a sudden feel that they're entitled to your change of rules. For example, like I said in the previous video, I put a rule in that you cannot come to my house without calling me or sending me a message. And then somebody came to my house and came and stood and wanted to see me, and I said, no, I am busy. And even if I wasn't really busy doing something, I was trying to rest. And so her coming interrupted my rest time. But I set that boundary in place that, listen, this is my time, this is me time, and it cannot be interrupted by anybody. In that way, we have learned the rule that you just can't show up to people's houses because you know where they live. When I lived back in school in Canada, I realized that people, including our leaders, couldn't come to our house without first informing us. Why? Because we could be at work, we could be at school, we could be in church, different reasons. So you don't just come to people's house because it's expensive to come to people's house and then go back home without seeing them. So you better make sure that you see them when you come to their house. So try to keep things consistent and steady, because it helps you to reinforce your original thresholds and beliefs, and it ensures that your lines remain clearly established. Number four, create a framework. You see, when it comes with boundaries, boundaries vary depending on the type of the relationships. However, you need to understand that there are sometimes you may need to have make exemptions. For example, my rules about not having visitors. I can't say no to my parents coming to see me if I didn't live at their house. So you must know that, okay, these rules are for these people, these rules are for these people. So what I encourage people to do is consider taking an hour or two alone each weekend, and then realize that and reevaluate your boundaries. How does this boundary affect this relationship? How is this boundary that I'm trying to create affecting this relationship? What are the expectations and all of that? Very, very important. All right. So, number one, self reflection. Number two, start small. Number three, start early. Number four, be consistent. Number five, create a framework. Number six, feel free to add extras. In some aspect of our lives, there are boundaries already in place, such as in the workplace, but consider those the barest minimum. Your colleagues may have their own personal boundaries, and it's okay for you to add some of your personal boundaries, because adding boundaries may also enhance your performance. I was reading a research by some Austrian researchers, and they found that employees who introduce personal workplace boundaries felt more empowered. And reading through that research, I realized that we feel like we are more powerful when we have our own boundaries, when we have those boundaries that help us determine what we want to do, why we want to do it, and where we want to do it. Extremely important boundaries to have and to take into consideration. All right. And then number seven, beware of social media and be aware of social media. Number one, beware. Number two, be aware. Beware because social media is an open space. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has something that they want to say. Everybody has a post that they want to make. Everybody has something. So you need to be able to draw that line of saying, this is who I am. Social media does not change that. And then be aware of the fact that there are some things you can learn that are beneficial on social media, and there are absolutely some things that are very destructive. So that line is very, very important, especially if you're going to be building. And then remember that these platforms allow for more communications than ever. They've also encouraged some very considerable boundary blurring, because there's a lot of oversharing happening on social media, because people are no longer concerned about personal information that we put out there, and we just put it out because we have access to it. So if you deem a particular action as boundary crossing in your real life, your concerns are no less valid online. You don't have to expose yourself on social media if it's distressing to you. And if another person is trying to do that, speak to them about it. Which leads me to the next one, which is talk, talk, talk. You see, communication is very critical in the world of boundaries, especially if someone consistently oversteps your boundaries. And while you might need to raise concern, these discussions does not need to be confrontational. You can just talk to them. And like I said earlier, when you speak to them, address the situation, not the person. Talk about how the situation made you feel, and don't impose it at the person. For example, when somebody needs you and you're not able to, you can say things like, as much as I want to support you right now, I don't have the emotional capacity, or I prefer not to hug people I don't know. Things like that. When you say things like that, you're being clear about your boundaries, you're being clear about your expectation. Or if, for example, you have a message that a friend who sends you messages nonstop, you can send them a message like, I can really see that you want to get a hold of me, but the best thing to do is to drop me a message and I'll get back to you when I can. Right now I'm unavailable. This gently highlights that their behavior is unacceptable, while simultaneously putting your threshold on it. Number 9, be your biggest champion. For boundaries to have a strong foundation, you need to show yourself love. You need to if you have a narrative in your head that you're worthless and undeserving, then you're going to really find it difficult to put boundaries in place that protect you. And a lot of it comes down to your self-worth and your self-value. How you see yourself will determine how you will take yourself. It doesn't take much to start encouraging this mindset either with other people. So when the more you feel good about yourself, the more you do things that are good for you, and that's going to help you change your internal dialogue and make you feel more deserving of the boundaries that you've put in place. And finally, number 10, gain some perspective. Listen, not having boundaries can be very detrimental to your health in general, not just your mental health. But going too far and overthinking them can also impact your emotions. So get a healthy level of thinking about boundaries. Have some, but don't be detected by your boundaries. Sometimes just go with your gut instinct, because we can be so good at having rules as human beings that we forget that we're human beings as well. So be a human being and allow yourself breathing space. Forgive yourself when you feel your boundaries have been um, changed or messed around with, but at the same time, give yourself permission to actually just be different, believe different, act different, and the likes of it. So I hope this really helps you with setting your boundaries. Let's go through the 10 of them again. Enjoy some self reflection, start small, set them early, be consistent, create a framework. Feel free to add extras, be aware of social medias, and beware of social medias. Talk, 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 talk. Be your biggest champion and gain some perspective. With these few points of mine, I hope I've convinced you and not confused you that in this year, 2023, you need to get some boundaries, my darling. Until I come your way next time, it's bye from me for now.